Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. They are called the Antitheses, a name given to them by an early church heretic named Marcion, who thought Jesus was tossing out the law of Moses. However, what Jesus was really doing was extending the law of Moses to apply in new ways. You see, the problem wasn't with the law, it was with how people had understood and applied it. You find these antitheses in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, and they have a special formula that is used nowhere else in the Bible. You have heard that it was said, Jesus would begin, and then he would say, but I say to you. And Jesus' point is to bring out the true meaning of the commandments of God, and at the same time to call forth a community of love to fulfill them unconditionally. Jesus is telling us that our actions should be based in love of God and love of neighbor. Or maybe we could put it the way one commentator did, to build a community where hate doesn't happen, where lust cannot deform, a truth-telling, non-retaliating, enemy-loving community of God. So that's the plan for this week, to look at these antitheses that we find in the Sermon on the Mount. I'll warn you now, we might find we have a lot of growing to do. Our first one is found in Matthew 5:21 through 26. You've heard that it was said to those of ancient times, you shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say, you fool, you will be liable to the hell of fire. So when you are offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are on the way to court with him, or your accuser may hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. Now, I'll just issue the challenge of Jesus' words right up front. Jesus takes the commandment about killing and broadens its implications and applications to include hateful attitudes, words, and motives. These things are far from what the kingdom of God is supposed to be. God calls God's children to live in love for one another. But you know as well as I do that our world is full of hateful words, hateful attitudes, hateful motives, and hateful actions. And if we are honest, we know that sometimes that has been us. Jesus calls us to a different way based in love. But that's not all, and I always find this part astounding. Jesus goes on to say that if you are about to come before God and offer your gift and someone else has something like a grudge against you, leave your gift, go make peace, and then come back and give it. Now, the thing is, we don't usually hear what Jesus said. What we hear, at least based on what we do, is if you are about to give your gift and realize that you have a grudge against someone, that's what we tend to think. And so we examine our lives for who we are angry at. But that's not what Jesus said. The impact of his words is that if you have someone who is angry with you, go straighten it out. Seek forgiveness and unity before you have come to unite with God. It's hard enough to seek peace when you are angry with someone, but it's even harder when someone is angry with you and you have to swallow your pride and apologize and make it right. This is why we share the peace during worship. The idea is that we reconcile with one another before we join with God in Holy Communion. We become one body before we partake in the body and the blood. I often use an image using two pins, and I form them into the shape of a cross. The vertical pin, I'll tell my listeners, represents our relationship with God, and the horizontal pin, our relationship with others. Then I tilt the pins a bit sideways, and I point out, if the vertical pin gets off kilter, the horizontal one does too. In other words, if our relationship with God is messed up, so is our relationship with others. And likewise, if the horizontal pin gets off kilter, so does the vertical. Or, if our relationship with others is messed up, so is our relationship with God. Jesus is urging us to get our human relationships right, and that helps our relationship with God. This is hard, but sometimes love is hard. Jesus invites us to love our neighbor as ourselves and to act on and in that love. But with God's help, perhaps we can be part of a community where hate doesn't happen, where lust cannot deform, a truth-telling, non-retaliating, enemy-loving community of God. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.